Welcome, everyone. This is Eric Bobrow with my esteemed colleagues, UK architect Tim Ball and Austrian architect Andreas Lettner. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're good, enjoying it.
So we're going to be talking about the Masters of ArchiCAD 2017 project, which we're jointly producing, which is going to be an exciting 8-month-long educational journey shared with ArchiCAD users around the world. This is the third year in which I have produced a Masters of ArchiCAD program, taking experts like Tim and Andreas and others to share knowledge and experience and the wisdom of how ArchiCAD can work in the real world. In this particular case, we're going to be doing an extended training program over a period of 8 months, developing a project from concept through construction documents and carrying BIM data all the way through, doing costing and quantity analysis, collaboration with consultants, really exploring how a complex project can be managed with the best practices approaches that are now possible with ArchiCAD 21. So Tim, tell us a little bit about your perspective on the project that we are sharing in terms of the educational focus and the business focus.
Well, I think certainly to me, although I think Graphisoft do a great job in terms of creating videos and providing localized training, it all by necessity has to be generic. And sometimes I think that the focus is not so much on how you use it for your business, but actually how you use it to create lovely looking 3D models. And at the end of the day, we're all working to earn a living, whether you're working for a practice or whether you're running your own practice. The idea of using a powerful tool like ArchiCAD is that it helps you run that business better, be more efficient, be more profitable. And for me, this gives us a chance to say to people in the real world, this is how you can actually use ArchiCAD to actually be a business tool to help you practice. And also it allows us to explore the fact that as architects, we're addressing different work stages. So the amount of detail in the 3D modeling that we need, the amount of data that we need at each stage of a project is different. And we need to make sure we give the right amount, neither too much nor too little, so that the people we're working with, everybody from the client to other consultants, gets from the model what they need. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we're not overworking and giving people too much information that either we're not going to get paid for or that they don't need and is therefore going to be confusing. So, and I think Andreas has a slightly different perspective to talk to us about. So over to you, Andreas.
My perspective isn't that different, Tim. I have to agree, Graphisoft does a real good job. If you see the development of this system, it's growing. On every new release, we get a bunch of new functions and we get a bunch of new possibilities. So what I think is that Graphisoft has become a major product which is to handle very intuitive in one way. But as you mentioned, we have to create projects, we have to design them, we have to make construction plans, and we have to fill in data. And so I see the whole system more or less like a big book full of functions which we could use. But the most exciting thing on this course is that we can discuss different approaches how to make a project in real world. So we don't have to play around with little examples. We can just show it on a complex project, and this project has about 60 rooms and all the necessary supporting infrastructure.
So tell us more about the project architecturally. I understand that you've adapted a real project that you're working on a neighboring or a similar site. So tell us just about the project architecturally.
The project is a typical hillside hotel, what we have around here in Austria, because the tourism industry is pretty important around here. And the exciting thing is that the site isn't flat at all. It is a difficult site. So one of the first questions you have to answer for yourself, how to get in the data for the site and how to design in this complex situation. The hotel itself, it is structured in 7 stories. The infrastructure is on the so-called ground floor. Cannot say ground floor here because the area is very steep. It is equipped with the usual infrastructure. It has got a gym, it has got an indoor pool, it has got a spa area. You will have areas dedicated for kids, you will have conference facilities, you will have 2 restaurants, you will have a lounge, a bar, and on top there are 3 more or less identical parts of the building containing all the rooms, suites, and the necessary infrastructure.
Okay, so we're, I know one of the things that we discussed when we were first conceiving of the project is that we want to have some complex modeling, we have some complex context, we want to demonstrate in this overall project many different aspects of ArchiCAD. We now have a fantastic stair tool and railing tool, which will be demonstrated. We'll be, of course, using curtain walls and other modeling things that not everybody gets a chance to see in context. And you mentioned that the 3 units on top are more or less identical, so you're using hot link modules, actually, I guess, sort of nested ones. We'll be using Teamwork, running it on a BIM server, or actually you've got it set up for BIM Cloud, is that right?
Yeah, we will discuss also these techniques. We will see the differences between BIM Cloud and the BIM server, and we will see how powerful this technique for collaboration has become.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've spent a lot of time talking about the structure of the file. Tim, it's been very interesting to work with you as you explained how in the UK you have a BIM execution plan, which is discussed among all the stakeholders early on in the project, where we work out sort of what data is expected and things. And we've been doing that on a little different level in terms of ArchiCAD itself, but of course planning as well how we're going to be handing off things to other consultants. And we're going to be bringing in a number of other experts over the course of the 8 months. So Andreas, I guess maybe we shouldn't name names right now because we have to confirm everybody's participation, but I know we have Sean Hopkins is probably going to be involved from South Africa on the quantities, and I've been talking to some of the structural engineering people here in the US who work with ArchiCAD, so hopefully we'll have a structural consultant working on that. Andreas, you have a colleague who's involved in really large projects who's going to be is interested in sharing some of the tips about working with, really huge project files and structures. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. He's specialist in BIM, so he probably can introduce us into the methods and technologies with all the advantages and disadvantages of so-called BIM manager.
Right. So, yeah, I think it's going to be very exciting because not only are the 3 of us coming from somewhat different backgrounds and perspectives, but we're going to be having these other experts jumping in for parts of it, really pooling the knowledge, building, in fact, a new knowledge base in our community. If you think about it, there's never been a project like this. I mean, people have done lots of projects of all sizes with ArchiCAD, but not with the idea of teaching others, not with the idea of sort of documenting the process. I think that this is really a unique adventure that we're embarking on. As I mentioned, in terms of the project structure, we've been talking about attributes and you know which system to work with. We're going to be basing it on the international version of ArchiCAD. I'll be translating for the Americans and explaining things in feet and inches, and also the different naming conventions in the U.S. version. But we're really, Tim, talk a little bit about some of the organizational structure that you've come up with that when both Andreas and I looked at, we thought that is just so clear, makes it so much, just makes so much sense.
Yeah, well, I think that the overarching organizational structure really is to do with the fact that as architects, we have work in different stages. So we have, concept, the simple ideas of what it's going to look like. We have the, take that forward to the more detailed design. And then we go through the construction stages. So we're getting those three stages. We're trying to kind of relate those back to the LOD levels, things like LOD 100, 200, 300, 350. Just trying to work out what those mean in the real world. And
let me just interrupt, Tim. Yeah. So LOD is a system, I believe it mostly is the acronym for level of detail, although I guess there's some other possible reference.
Level of data.
Level of data. So it's basically how much stuff is there. And so in LOD 100, you have a very basic concept model with not much detail. And 200 takes it further, and 300 and 350 quite a bit further. So ultimately, it's a very codified system that forces you to think in terms of what's the appropriate amount of information and a level of detail in the modeling for any given phase. So tell us a little bit about the common arrangement of work sections that I think that you're using for some of the naming as well.
Yes, I've been doing this for some years now, and I've talked to a few people over the years about it who've also, I think, found it a very interesting approach, because when you look at the way that all of the attributes in ArchiCAD are listed, if you open up the building materials dialog box, for instance, the listing is done by somebody from Graphisoft. Often it's been localized, so it's done, in something that might relate to the UK, the US, or the international version. And I don't think it's as rigorous as it could be. I think that, and it is difficult to do, when you're doing so many localized versions, it's very difficult for Graphisoft to know what system to actually, take on. What we're doing is we're actually using a slightly older UK system called the Common Arrangement of Work. And the reason for that system being useful is that it follows a very logical process of how you build. So it uses an alphanumeric coding system that is very easy to remember. And you start with groundworks and you work through things like structural concrete, masonry, etc., until you get to the end, which is all to do with finishes, services, all of those kinds of things. And what it allows you to do is to find attributes that you're looking for quickly, because they're all grouped in the same work areas. So if you're working on groundworks, you know exactly where to go to find a building material. We're then saying it seems sensible to use the same alphanumeric system for all attributes you can, because it just speeds up finding things. So what we're doing is we're starting with building materials and we're applying the system to that. We're also then applying a similar system to surfaces. And we're also applying a similar system to layers. So the idea is that you've only got one system to remember. And of course that system is, in a sense, we've invented it because there is no international standard as yet. However, the principles are very easy to translate into any kind of local way of working, or indeed specific to particular types of building. Because, of course, Andreas and I, our experience is in fairly conventional building projects, but we're not used to doing huge airports or, international shipping harbours or anything of that sort. Neither are we very commonly working just on things like interior design projects. But the idea of actually coming up with a system that suits your work, that suits your location in the world, and then actually just applying that system rigorously is very powerful. And of course, once you then start applying that to your favorites, that creates a whole new level of efficiency and repetition between projects. Don't forget, it's the first thing about any kind of computer-aided design system is that your aim is to draw it once and then to repurpose it for future projects, only updating it if things have changed and it needs updating. And I think you've always talked about that, Eric, in all of your teaching over the years. Reuse things.
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the things that we're going to be coming up with as we work through this is a new template system. I've developed, of course, over the years, Master Template as a robust, very effective environment for running projects. And I'm going to be actually retooling it this year based on some of our discussions, as well as some of the other things that I've learned from other templates that are publicly available. But the brainstorming process that we've had, the three of us, for development of detail in the attribute system, in the view map, in the layout book, all of these things has been fascinating. And I think it's going to evolve as we go as well. Andreas, tell us a little bit more about your background in terms of the project sizes. I know you have actually worked on like railway station, public projects and things. So your range is probably larger than either Tim or myself in terms of working, with.
Not sure, but I'm working with ArchiCAD or on projects, on real projects with ArchiCAD since 1991. So there are a few, and it started from residential buildings with about 20 up to 30 flats, and it ended with, as you mentioned, the railway station here in Austria. And so it's the typical work for an architect here. We are not that specialized. So actually we are doing from interior up to bigger projects, everything what we are allowed to do. And these days, most of my work is based on urban planning. So one of the biggest jobs I'm doing now is making a development for an about 30,000 square meters area for residential and some commercial buildings.
So I think what we're attempting to do here is to take a fairly good sized project. I mean, the 60 rooms hotel is certainly a lot bigger than any house or even a large mansion. Not as big as, Freedom Tower or some of the other mega projects, but certainly large enough to have issues of scale, in terms of the siting, in terms of the team members being able to go in and work on different parts of the project to do teamwork. So I think we're going to be able to share a workflow and sort of methodologies that can be scaled down or scaled up pretty readily. So I think today we're going to finish up pretty soon in terms of our exploration, but we will be having some additional talks about this as we go, both before we launch, which is in just a couple of weeks on July 12th, and I believe we'll be able to share progress with the ArchiCAD community as we go. Perhaps have a little chats about some of the things that we've learned, some of the things that didn't work or that really worked, better than expected. So I think any final comments from either of Andreas or Tim?
Yeah, I'm excited that I can take part in this experiment. I don't think that there's anything more exciting for an architect than to collaborate, and in this case it's the international collaboration, which is, well, thanks.
Yeah, well, it does, it pushes all the three of us to think in a different way, and that's great. It's part of learning. Life's all about learning, and the more you can do, the more fun it gets. So yeah, we're going to push ourselves as well as push the people that are going to be watching.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting voyage. When we did Masters of ArchiCAD a couple of years ago, I think we had about 300 ArchiCAD users join us from around the world. So I'm looking forward to some substantial number of you who are watching this video to join us. You can find more information on the mastersofarchicad.com website or on bobrow.com. So my last name, Eric Bobrow, because I'll be keeping sort of updates posted on both of those sites. And if you have any questions technically about what we're doing or about signing up, you can write to support@bobrow.com, and I'll handle that. My role here in the project, since I'm not an architect, is to make sure that the whole thing runs smoothly and that it's as clear as possible from a learning perspective, because that's my specialty, is helping ArchiCAD users learn and master the software. And I think working with Tim and Andreas, both excellent teachers as well as advanced users of the software, we have an ideal combination. So thank you, Tim. Thank you, Andreas. We'll say it's good night for me. Good day for the two of you.
Good morning here.
All right. And we will catch you again soon.